What's up, guys? It's your boy, Barca Boy 103, and welcome to episode 20 of the Blaugrana Faithful Discussion, where today I have a very special guest. It is Dan from the Barcelona podcast. If you don't know what the Barcelona podcast is, you're living under a rock. It is, of course, the biggest Barcelona podcast in English. Links in the description down below, also in the title as well. So feel free to check him out. Of course, he does YouTube content as well. Now, Dan and I were not doing too well based on the mood as of late over the past 24 hours. Been very, very hectic, but we're going to dissect what has been a catastrophic week for Barcelona and also some of the news in regards to Xavi over the past 24 hours. Now, to be honest, in my opinion, the PSG game feels like it's been like 2 weeks. Like it feels like it's been forever, but it's only just been not even a week as of today. But of course, that capitulation did happen. What are your thoughts there overall, just quickly, if people haven't been aware of your thoughts on that game?
Oh, you mean the PSG one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could probably tell, for people who might know me, I usually don't have facial hair. I do some other broadcasts and stuff. And so I usually shave. I usually make sure I'm looking camera ready. But this week has definitely taken its toll on me for sure. You can see that it's starting to fill in a little bit. This is what, however many days since PSG. And I
Mhm.
did feel like the nerves of PSG and the idea of like needing to get over those European demons was I think my nerves are already fried by that point in the week. I think that the importance of that game, I felt the weight of it, and losing that game in the way that it did, where by the 30th minute, and then it's just a slow burn, suffering, knowing what feels inevitable, and the way that, and I say this with the Barca Femini having just lost their first semifinal leg to Chelsea 1-0, but
Mhm.
they are the team that in FC Barcelona world has felt inevitable. The Guardiola team and what every Barcelona team for the last decade plus has been compared to, they felt inevitable. And so when Barcelona feel like they're on the receiving end, like Bayern Munich, of something that feels inevitable about a lead slipping away like that, it's heart wrenching. And I think to kind of contradict what happened that we're going to talk about with El Clasico yesterday, nothing about that felt inevitable at all about Barcelona
Mhm.
losing. So it was almost the opposite feeling that PSG, not to say it felt worse, but yeah, because it felt like PSG was it was inevitable they were going to come back and overturn that. That one just felt so sour and painful, and Europe and all those things. Yeah, but then El Clasico just feels like you're getting a backhand from mom if you said the wrong thing. You said a curse word when you were 10 years old, or
Mhm.
however old I was, and then you look at the corner of your eye and you're like, oh no, mom's not going to be too happy about this, and that's kind of what El Clasico felt like, more of a snap of the fingers than it did where with PSG. Now, I'm not condoning that. A mother would give you a thwack for a. I'm not condoning child abuse or anything like that. I just want
Yeah, yeah. But the crazy thing about PSG is that we were well in it, and I think you and we can both agree that if Arujo does not get that red card, fairly confident we would have at least progressed. Maybe we would have conceded. Maybe the game would have been a bit tighter, yes. But it was very much a copy and paste of the first leg, where yes, we're giving PSG a bit of the possession. We're still looking very threatening on the counterattack. We're creating chances. Raphinha down the left hand side was doing a madness. We defended pretty well. And just one last of concentration, one last of error, everything falls apart. It's crazy that at halftime every single Barcelona fan on wherever you are, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, wherever, everyone was saying the capitulation is coming, and that's honestly, from my point of view, it kind of healed me a bit because it's like it's coming. It sucks that it is coming, but at least it, and it's not going to come as a surprise like Bayern, Liverpool, Rome, maybe PSG the first time, Eintracht Frankfurt as well. All those ones really came as a big shock. But this one kind of just like it's gonna come, especially when PSG are gonna be attacking. Once they got that goal before halftime, I felt like it was over at that point. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I kind of feel like that's worse though, because it doesn't have to be inevitable. Like not every team that's played with 10 men has lost a match, right? And I know Kylian Mbappe and Dembele and the talent of PSG. Yes, of course, they were going into the tie even 11v11. You could argue they were a better team. That Luis Enrique is a better manager than Xavi on paper and in principle, and he made the changes necessary. That being Luis Enrique. We could talk about the tactics or whatever about that, but Luis Enrique did what needed to be done to win that match. Made the changes, sure, but again, it's that idea that if Barcelona were good enough, it didn't have to happen. Like they did have a 4-2 aggregate lead. And I agree with you. Like I had
Mhm.
the same feeling. Like it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But I think it still kind of stinks a big one that it did have to happen, because on paper, they're up 4-2 in aggregate. It didn't have to happen if they had a way to survive. And it would have taken a miraculous effort. It would have been a miracle, right? But Yeah, like you, I agree that by the 32nd, 34th minute, I was like, I mean, it doesn't have to happen. But then I'm also watching the clock in slow
Mhm.
motion and saying, well, all they need is 60 minutes to go off the clock, and then they move on. And but
I felt like if we just made it to around the hour mark without conceding, we could have pushed through. But the issue is,
yeah,
from Xavi's point of view, what could you have done? You're down to 10 men, and Xavi said afterwards in the game, after in the post-match press conference as well, that 10 men in the Champions League when you're facing 11 is suicide. Like, even despite it being one difference of number, it's just too difficult. Of course, in La Liga, you can get away with it because our talent is going to be greater than most of the teams. Maybe if you're away from home, it's a bit different. But even in match 50-50 game in the Champions League, you're down one less player. They have the motivation to make the comeback. It's so difficult. And I was there watching the game thinking, I really have no idea what Xavi could have done better. I think he coached the team very well over the 2 legs. We went down. Of course, the big gamble was taken off. Who was he taking off to bring in Inigo Martinez? He could have taken off, honestly, Gundogan, De Jong, Pedri, Lamine Yamal, or Raphinha. Any one of those 5 he could have taken off. He chose to take off. Sorry?
or Cancelo.
Or I think that back 5 was pretty sorry because he didn't want to. Again, I know Cancelo defensively
Yeah.
isn't the greatest, but at that time you want to keep your back line intact.
Well,
I think
I'm arguing that you keep the back 5 intact, but you actually move Raphinha back, because the idea there would be that Raphinha was most useful by getting in behind, right? And so if you lose what Raphinha gives you best, but you want to keep on his defensive intensity, then Cancelo was the guy you sacrificed. But you're right, like you can't force him.
But the issue is if you drop Raphinha back, Raphinha's gonna be going 1v1 with Dembele the whole entire game.
Exactly.
Yes,
that's somehow worse than Cancelo going 1v1. Which
exactly. I think to be fair, Cancelo, take away the goal, of course, which he cost us for the Dembele goal. I thought he did quite all right with Dembele. Of course, he gave away the penalty. I think from the first game until the 20th minute in the second game, he did an all right job. I think, to be fair, especially with his defensive.
4 stand-up tackles that I had seen. But yeah, to your point about what could have Xavi done, you go back to even the first leg. That 2 cards, I mean, arguably 1 card, but 2 cards decided that whole tie completely. Because even with Araujo getting the red card, if Christensen had not picked up that yellow card in the first leg and Christensen gets to start in the second leg, Araujo probably doesn't get the red card anyway, right? These are all what ifs, but that Christensen yellow was so huge, because I'm saying after the match, I was fortunately on the CBS Sports Golazo show, and it's funny, they put the bottom ticker as I'm talking, as in like Dan Hilton of the Barcelona podcast says, and the one thing they had me saying was that Barcelona needed a defensive midfielder or a pivot, and that's true. Like, Christensen has been good enough in the Liga to steady the ship. That 12-match unbeaten streak was great with Christensen after that change. But, is he the long-term solution at the pivot? Probably not. But B, you could see without even him on the field as the quote-unquote, makeshift pivot or makeshift defensive midfielder for the last few months, that Barcelona had no shot with 10 men down without a defensive midfielder. It was untenable. It wasn't going to happen.
Exactly. The issue is the reason why PSG, I think, won the game was not because of the Araujo red card. It was because they won that midfield. That midfield 3, yes, on paper of Gundogan, De Jong, Pedri, looks great. It's just not balanced whatsoever. I think in the end, it was kind of a double pivot of De Jong and Pedri. They're not really ball winners, and you have a balanced midfield. Yes, on paper, maybe Barcelona's players individually are better, but you had a balanced midfield there with PSG, with Vitinha in the pivot, Zaire Emery on the right, Fabian Ruiz on the left. Very balanced midfield where they can, complement each other, and we didn't have that. Yes, you could have said, oh, Xavi could have started Romeu. Let's not be stupid. That's not a reality whatsoever. Yeah. So I think once that red card happened, you're thinking, okay, he took off Lamine Yamal, which again, at the time, I said it's fair enough. He's the youngest one out of them. Yes, he's having a great game so far. He was doing well against Nuno Mendes, got the assist as well. But you don't want to lose the midfield coverage. I think it was probably between Lamine Yamal and Pedri, which, to be honest, Xavi did say as well after the game, saying I was choosing between Lamine Yamal and Pedri. In the end, I decided to take off Lamine Yamal because I wanted more control in the midfield, which again makes sense. But you push past that. You're coming out in the second half. What else can Xavi really do? He has no other changes to make to even salvage Barcelona any chance. Yes, he can chuck on all the defenders and just pray that something happens, but they just invite pressure. And once you invite pressure, the dam is gonna probably break inevitably. So yeah, it did suck. I think the scoreline again was a bit flattering. If it was 3-1, maybe it would have been a bit better, so to speak. But what's really annoying as well that you bring up the Barca Femenil as well. And they also lost in the Montjuic. I'm really starting to hate the Montjuic Stadium at this point because it's just nothing but bad luck in big moments this season. We had the big game against Real Madrid. We lost the big game against Girona when they were top of the table. We lost. the stadium is just cursed at this point, in my opinion. But
well, I wouldn't even say curse. I'd say that it does not, of course, like there's just thousands, tens of thousands of less. That's not hyperbole. Tens of thousands of less people for that kind of situation. So,
and they're so far away as well. You have that track. A lot of my friends have gone to the Munch Week, and they tell me that there's no atmosphere. By the way, what I do want to mention as well is that I do blame the fans a little bit, maybe like 5 or 10% on the Araujo red card, because not only did the Barcelona players, coaching staff, and Xavi's head drop with that red card, the fans dropped as well. One of my friends was at the game. He told me that the stadium was dead from when Araujo got that red card until Gundogan hit the post after we conceded the Vitinha goal. The stadium was quiet. There was no, energy, no momentum, and I think it would have been different at the Camp Nou because they would have been, of course, closer to the players. They could have at least built up a little bit of an atmosphere, but they're so far away. The views from like basically everywhere are crap unless you're paying for a VIP section. And I just think I'm not blaming the state. I think what the club did in regards to the stadium, move was the best thing. They couldn't have gone to, of course, the Johan Cruyff Stadium because it was too little. They couldn't have enough time to, increase the capacity there as well. I mean, it sucks, but honestly, at this point, it was just like, again, when we all at halftime knew that Barcelona were going to capitulate, you just had yourself ready at moment to, accept that defeat. And then, of course, I want to get your thoughts, Dan, from the PSG game going to the Classico. What were your thoughts? How confident were you? What was your mood? Because I was saying we are 100% going to lose, especially if Real Madrid beat Man City. If Madrid got knocked out by Man City, their heads would be coming in a bit down as well. I think the game would have been much, much more even. And I said it, I tweeted it in all my videos. If Madrid win against City, which I think, again, is possible, they have the Champions League juice. I didn't rule it out completely. There is no chance to win this game. I'm not trying to boost my own horn saying that I was right, but again, the script has always been written. We've seen this with other Barcelona capitulations as well. You go back to Anfield. We lost on the Tuesday. On the weekend, we lost the Copa del Rey final. You go to Bayern Munich 8-2. Our season ended. We lost, I think, to like Huesca or something at home, which, gave Madrid the title. You look at the PSG 4-1 during COVID. We then lost the lead to Granada. You look at the Inter Milan capitulation as well last season in the group stages. We lost the Classico over the weekend 3-1. It's written. It always happens. So I had zero faith. But I want to get your thoughts. What was your mood going into the Classico post the PSG game?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty cynical. I was expecting, usually I'm generally 50-50 positive on things like that, but away at the Bernabeu, where Barcelona's actually had some pretty good
decent record. Yeah.
Seasons. Yeah. And, honestly, that's the odd thing about this El Clasico, too, that they lost that match 3-2 in a stoppage time in the 90th minute. But I know we're going to get into all the variations of that match, but it didn't really have to end in a loss to Barcelona. It didn't. It could have been a victory. And so while I was a bit cynical, I also thought one of the helpful things was that Lamine Yamal, trying to find silver linings, little positive, was that him coming off due to the red card meant that he was pretty well rested. In theory, he was the most well-rested player going into El Clasico. And funny enough, he actually played like the most well-rested, most prepared.
Araujo was pretty well rested as well with the red card as well, so he went off a bit earlier than Lamine Yamal.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Raul also off, but he also had a lot of, we'll say, emotional weight and baggage that he was carrying. But yeah, Lamine Yamal comes off in the 30th minute. So he was well rested, comes in El Clasico, looks well rested. So on paper, that first 10 minutes, there was a path forward, obviously, for Barcelona getting that first early goal to win the match. And, I was cynical, but I wasn't like, oh, Barcelona going to get absolutely, they're going to get destroyed. It's not going to work. They're going to be worse.
I didn't think we were going to get destroyed. I just knew for a fact we were going to lose. I didn't know if it was going to be a close game or whether, comfortable Madrid 2-0 win. I predicted 3-1 in my match preview, so it was 3-2. So I was pretty close on the money, but I just had they talk. Of course, pretty El Clasico there's going to be a lot of media, a lot of promotion. You have all the players sitting down.
There wasn't. This was I think this was one of the more tame El Clasicos going into it.
To be fair, a lot of the players spoke to the media. So you had, I think, ESPN come to the Ciudad Deportiva, DAZN were there as well speaking. So I've seen a lot of player interviews. Of course, Araujo released his book, after the PSG game. So he did a lot of talking. So it's more talking than usual, so to speak. And all the players, we're gonna get our heads back up. We're gonna bounce back. Yes, we lost, but now's our chance to rectify the season. It's just the same thing. And again, like I told you, the script was written. It's the same thing every single time. I knew for a fact their heads have dropped. And I have no confidence in the team's mentality, especially after capitulation.
I guess I'm asking about I guess I was more referencing the fan response. I felt like the fan response was more tame. And that's just internet and, our listeners and whatever overlap we have. But Yeah, I just in general felt like even the people I follow in Catalonia or know in Catalonia, it just felt like, and you said that in the stadium too. Like once that energy dropped in, well, sorry, that's the Bernabeu, but I mean the Bernabeu was rocking pretty well. But even the away supporters for Barcelona, like there was an energy that wasn't the way you usually see it to be. Yeah, so I just felt like the fan base didn't have the same energy going into it, I guess. So to your point, yeah, you're right. The media, the players, there was a lot of conversation and talk, but I also felt like a lot of the conversation and talk was more post PSG than it was pre Classico, if that makes sense, right? It didn't feel like I kind of felt like even when I was doing my content plan, right? It's like game on Tuesday with PSG. PSG is basically what we're reviewing and thinking about until Friday, and then like Saturday, right? So it's like 24 hours to prepare for El Clasico as opposed to the normal 96 or 3-4 days leading up to El Clasico.
Yeah, when there's two big games back to back, it's always going to favor whoever has the most momentum, especially when you talk about derbies, classicos, form goes out the window. So it was going to be whoever came into that game hot, and we fortunately didn't, and Madrid did. Even though they played 120 minutes of brutal defensive football in England, they still had enough time to recuperate. Of course, heavy rotation from Ancelotti in the game, where he just started a bunch of midfielders. Now we can talk about the game, which, to be honest, my mood, like I mentioned, I had no confidence whatsoever. I thought we competed pretty well. I think it was a very, very even game. Of course, there's been a lot of controversy around it, which we won't touch upon.
Oh yeah.
But again, I think more so, I've seen a lot of people compare it. You can look at Barcelona's 2 goals scored, both Lunin mistakes. The 3 goals we conceded, all Joao Cancelo mistakes as well. So I don't think really anyone, carved anyone open and create chances and scored them, although both teams did miss those kind of chances. But I felt like it was a game there for the taking. I think the game, to be honest, had a draw written all over. But I will say this. Once Vasquez scored to make it 2-2, I'm thinking this game has the 2016-2017 Classico written all over it when Messi scored in the last second. I didn't think that Barcelona were going to score in the last second. I said, this just screams last second goal. And I said it, and then it ended up happening. But I felt like Barcelona played well and played much better than I expected after, of course, the PSG game. But what are your thoughts on the overall performance before we talk about, of course, the controversy around it?
Yeah, all the comparisons to the Messi point, but I also thought it was a little more like the Kessié one, where Kessié scores late for that winner because, it was like, is this the best Barcelona? No. Is this the best Real Madrid? No. But is this El Clasico and the biggest match in world football? Yeah. So it really felt like even, backing into both of these teams, not in their best way at the moment. But to your point, yes, Madrid playing a lot of confidence. I did think tactically before, we get into the controversy and the ups and downs of the match, I did feel like tactically Ancelotti kind of succeeded by, and this is after the goal. So Barcelona capitalizes on the mistake by Lunin and gets the header goal from the corner. And Barcelona has been now for this whole unbeaten run until this past week. They've been pretty good on set pieces, and that's a credit to. It's not Oscar Hernandez, but who's the second assistant? Trying to remember his name. Whoever that is.
On the VAR.
No. The second assistant for Barcelona, Xavi's second assistant, the gentleman.
Sergio Allegri, Oscar Hernandez.
Yes, Sergio Allegri. Right. Couldn't remember his name. So he this season has done an outstanding job with set piece. I think Barcelona's set piece percentages and success from
very, very good this season. We scored from a lot. Usually we go a season. I remember a season where we go a whole season without scoring a corner.
Oh yeah. So for them to succeed the way they have, good on them. But then Ancelotti did succeed, I think, tactically, which is something, not to say that he doesn't make changes, but he makes less changes and tinkers a little bit less than other managers do. But what he did was he basically did the same thing that Luis Enrique did for that second leg, was by trying to force everything through the middle, that being Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo, and bringing them close with Bellingham dropping in a bit. That forced Lewandowski numerically to also drop in. So Barcelona's only outlet, and yes, Lamine Yamal succeeded, and this isn't taking anything away from him individually, but the whole game plan and the only outlet and the only resource that Barcelona had was Lamine Yamal high on that right side, because Raphinha had to tuck in. And yes, it worked for buildup because he'd be closer to Lewandowski, but he also had to tuck in to defend, unfortunately. And so on the other side, you had those 1v1s, Lamine Yamal against Camavinga. And again, as we'll talk about, he won that, right? So it's like I'm still caught between two minds in here, because Barcelona were not as good as Real Madrid, but there was certainly a path going forward. And I think both managers got things right, and both managers got things a little bit wrong.
I think, to be honest, I agree a little bit. I don't really see where Xavi went wrong. I think when you go into halftime 1-1, He took a massive risk taking off Christensen for Vermin. We all thought, I'm thinking bloody hell, Christensen yet again injured. We heard a lot about Christensen at his time at Chelsea, just gets these random injuries out of nowhere. But then it came out saying that no, this is a tactical change. So I think
no, he nailed it. He nailed the Fermin Lopez, and we can talk about the second half. He nailed that substitute. When I say tactically, what I think that could have gone wrong, I think trusting Joao Felix in this instance was probably the issue, because you're losing the defensive solidity and cover for Cancelo on that left side. And
very true. But at that point, you're thinking
offensively.
At that point, you're thinking it's 1-1. You're about to lose. You're 20 minutes away from losing the league title. You gotta take something and risk it. I think Xavi's biggest mistake was not taking off Cancelo for Hector Fort. Hector Fort was warming up since halftime.
I hear that. That makes sense. I just, you and I both know that doesn't happen. Like, you just know that.
True. But I'm sitting there thinking that Hector Fort put in a brilliant performance on the other side of Madrid at the Metropolitano Stadium against Atletico Madrid. What's the difference between that and the Santiago Bernabeu? I think the Bernabeu was pure quiet today. The pure quiet of the whole entire game until Bellingham scored the goal. Talk about the roof being closed, stuff like this, conditioned atmosphere. Absolutely nothing. It was very, very quiet. So I felt like Hector Fort couldn't have done much worse than Cancelo. I think that was Xavi's one big mistake. I think he even only used 4 substitutions in this game. He brought on, of course, Pedri, Fermin, Felix, and Ferran, and that was it. So he still had that 5th sub available to him. I think not taking off Cancelo, I think that was his biggest mistake and maybe his only mistake in the game. I think the correct lineup was selected as well, having Pedri on the bench, Christensen back in the pivot. I think the issue comes down to the players yet again. You look at the 2 times Barcelona took the lead and look at the time when Madrid equalized, you're talking less than 10 minutes. Every single time this season we face a top side, not even just Champions League, even top 8 in La Liga, it's the same story. We take the lead and we just can't hold on to save our lives. That's why I said back to the PSG game, if Dembele does not score that goal before halftime, we go in 1-0 leading, my mood would have been much different. But as soon as we, concede that goal, we could not hold on to the break, as we can never hold on this season. The capitulation was set up from the beginning. I think that's the same reason here. And it sucks that, it's individual little mistakes that, cost us the goals. If, Cancelo was just aware of who was behind him. If he, took out Vasquez before the penalty, and Pedri took out Brahim Diaz during the buildup before the Bellingham goal as well. All these little things where you expect, of course, the older players to be more mature and more experienced, but the younger players hopefully to gain from it. It just sucks from, that point of view. But of course, go ahead.
Yeah, and I want to kind of heap on the idea of that lack of a ball-playing pivot that Barcelona have been missing this season, because while Busquets didn't have the mobility, of course, and we saw him suffer against Modric, two old fogies last season, and Modric wound up getting the better of Busquets in those instances in El Clasico, but except in the Spanish Super Cup. But now against PSG and against Real Madrid, we've seen that Araujo has greatly improved with the ball at his feet. Greatly improved. That is something that,
greatly improved, but still not great.
Exactly. Well, that's the point, is that both Luis Enrique and Ancelotti said, all right, he's gotten better, but we're going to force this guy to beat us, which again is why Lewandowski has to drop in a little bit deeper. And if Lewandowski isn't winning all those aerial duels, which I think he won 4 of 7 yesterday, if he's not winning 6 of 7, then Barcelona don't have a moment to breathe. And we talk about control as well, the lack of a controlling pivot, which Christensen was not in the first half. And Pedri, it's funny because Pedri was that defensive midfielder. It wasn't Gundogan. Pedri was the deepest midfielder.
Yeah.
And Lopez obviously is pushing farther forward. And I thought Barcelona, it seems counterintuitive, but I think Barcelona with Fermin Lopez did, especially that second half, that extra energy, that extra press. They took advantage of what Real Madrid doesn't do well. And that is Lunin is not good under pressure as a keeper, which brought Real Madrid fans asking if Courtois was healthy enough to come back for a late Champions League run to replace Lunin. You probably do, because while Lunin has been a good shot stopper, his weaknesses are glaring, which is that he doesn't really control the air well off corners. He's a good shot stopper with things coming at him. He closes space down. He's big, good on angles, but he also doesn't really, command with the ball at his feet and handle pressure well. So for Barcelona moving forward, I mean, again, that's the consideration, that if somebody's going to man mark Kubarsi out, because Kubarsi is a good athlete, but not a great athlete. So it's not like he's going to, against the top tier presses and top tier athletes and teams, he's not going to be able to drive forward like he does in the bottom half of the Liga teams. So that puts a lot of onus on Araujo, because even with Koundé, I thought Koundé was really good working with Lamine Yamal positionally. And Vinny Jr., he scored the PK, but Vinny Jr. didn't have an amazing game at all. So hats off to Koundé, again, being excellent. And again, it's not that Araujo did anything wrong, but it's that teams are set up to say, you got to beat us. And I think until Barcelona have personnel that is a ball-playing pivot again, who can control a game and kind of calm things down and can play those long diagonals from the back, I think Barcelona continue to suffer having those numerical disadvantages because they can play out of the back. They did 3 times, really good passes of play. What is it? They coupled together 15, 20 passes in a row, and they worked through it. As in Real Madrid, they worked through it, but it's not happening not only quickly, but they're not getting into that final phase quickly. They're not controlling any other team's third of the field at the top level, at the elite level. And those are the margins. That's what Barcelona fans want. They want to be able to control against elite teams, because controlling against Cadiz or controlling against Almeria, I mean, what does that do for you? I mean, Almeria beat Barcelona last season anyway, so what am I talking about?
Yeah. It's crazy that this team is just, I would say, 2 or 3 final pieces away from being a side that I expect to compete at the highest level. And you look at the injuries that we've suffered this season, you know, De Jong's come back for 2 games and now he's out again. You have Gavi, who's on his ACL, and Bola, who's on his hamstring as well. And we did sign a suitable, you know, Busquets replacement. We know we're all on the preseason hype of Romeo. We were all on that train. Thinking unbelievable. We got like a shot gap for at least a year. I guess mentally couldn't really compete at the highest level and he fell through. But it's just crazy to see that, you know, we're 1 or 2 positions away from competing. But yeah, again, it doesn't really look that. We just look at the top games to always be falling through, which is a bit annoying. But in this game as well, despite us, you know, despite the lack of concentration, lack of tactical adjustments, we were still winning the game and we got robbed again. Like, you know, we talk about not only the Lunin on the line save, we'll talk about that, but also, you know, there's definitely a shout for the Fermin penalty as well. You had Lamine Yamal through on goal where Camavinga takes him out and it's not real too much coverage there. Is that a straight red card? I think VAR had an absolute howler in this game. I don't really think it came down to Cesar Soto Grando, the referee himself. I think what he lacked was a lot of the fouls not being called. I think Modric should have been sent off of this game. Could have gotten 2 yellow cards in that first half. Didn't get any in the second half. Very, very picky with Barcelona as well. You know, Koundé does nothing, gets yellow. Vinicius is spitting in his face, gets nothing. Lewandowski gets 1 foul call after all the abuse that he gets from, you know, behind him tackles, as well as those things that lacked from Cesar Soto Grando. But the big decisions, you know, the penalty for Fermin, the red card potentially for Camavinga, and of course the goal line is where the VAR comes in. Now, I don't know what your thoughts is. Let's talk about firstly on the Lunin off the line. When I was watching the game, I genuinely thought that was a goal. From the 2 angles that I've seen, I was watching the game on ESPN. I'm thinking that, look, the ball is like halfway on Lunin's arm, and Lunin's arm is beyond the line. So I'm thinking there is no way that this cannot be chalked off. Because I understand that there is no clear, pure evidence that the ball crossed the line from the 2 angles they showed. But you see all the angles that come out later on. You see all the other, you know, media companies that have the technology to detect whether or not the ball has crossed the line, and it has. And again, I think definitely from those 2 angles, it looked more so the ball across the line than it didn't. It's just crazy. What are your thoughts?
Well, firstly, I want to go all the way back to the Busquets and Romeo point that it's like going to a gourmet pizza restaurant and seeing the brick ovens there. Then somebody brings out a frozen pizza to the table. And that's kind of what it feels like. Like, it's pizza. Yes, it's pizza, but it's obviously not the same thing. And then so to respect to Romeo, it's just any idea that he was brought in as a Busquets successor is not.
Of course not. My mindset was I remember I was in Barcelona celebrating the league title, and Joao Cancelo came out with like top 7 pivot options for Barcelona, and Romeo was smacked down 7th. And then of course we end up.
I watched him at Girona, and I'll stand by it that the Girona or Romeo that played last season for them, if that player had played for Barcelona this season, I mean, it doesn't necessarily change results of the top tippity top, but it does enable some more rotation. It does enable.
It would be a much better side, 100%. Yeah, and we saw that in preseason. He was the man of the match in the Classico in Miami.
Right.
That's the crazy part. And it took him just 1 month to absolutely just lose it. I don't know if it was mentally the pressure of playing at the top side, playing every game. I don't know what happened, but at the time, you're thinking.
The other example I would have that this compares me to is Junior Firpo. Same thing, where I watched Junior Firpo and I said, that's what that guy's going to bring to Barcelona from Real Betis. And you thought about his ceiling and his floor. And he said, well, if you get something in the middle. But he looked like such a shell of the player that he was at Girona in the way that Junior Firpo looked at. Such a shell. And confidence is such an important thing, right? And that's the difference. And all right, so we'll do the goal line thing first. The goal line thing isn't necessarily that the referee or VAR, because even the conversation came out about the VAR.
Yeah, it came out this morning, yeah.
But the issue is that the fact that with goals the way they are, the fact that there is no goal line technology in the Liga And I mean, just because they're trying to pinch pennies or whatever they are, the lack of goal line technology in the Liga is a joke. The fact that it's 2024 and that's not just a universal standard across the league.
Remember that we had the same issue last season. This is not the first time we had a
No,
goal line technology talk. I think last season in Busquets' last game, Lewandowski almost it looked like on replay the ball went in, but there was no goal line technology. It commented after the game that it did cross the line, all this stuff. It's not the first time we've seen this. We've been knowing that there's been no goal line technology. A lot of people who maybe watch La Liga from the outside don't know that. But you and I, as Barcelona fans, as we get shafted by the referees every single week, but they scream Negrera from the rooftop. We've known this, and we know that Habitat is too cheap to put a goal line technology in. But now that that's happening in a Classico, in a big game at the Bernabeu, everyone now is talking about it.
Well, the argument of goal line technology is that unlike things that are, we'll say, human error or things that you just kind of have to live with that are part of the game, that as I always say on my stuff, that over the course of a season, Barcelona's going to get hard done by, but Barcelona's going to get a few things that they don't deserve either. And it does, I don't want to hear about the conspiracies and things like that. Yes, that was true 80 years ago, and I've done my homework and I've histories about that on my channel about, yes, there have been conspiracies and there have been issues in the past, but you know, in today's day and age, like the Liga wants everyone to succeed, but they want to put the best product on possible. Like it doesn't help the Liga product to have all this controversy and all these issues after a game.
Week in, week out.
Right. And referees make mistakes, sure. But Barcelona also not the only team to be frustrated by goal line technology and we'll say issues with the refereeing in the Liga this season. It's not just Barcelona. Like there are other examples of this. Real Madrid have their own complaints as well, which obviously always sounds
only the one against Valencia, I would say.
Right.
Everything else, I mean, look at the Almeria game where they almost got turned over by the Bub team. They needed to, you know, couple of
Bellingham that I'm misremembering, or I feel like there was a card for Bellingham they were really upset about.
Yeah, for the Valencia game, right?
Maybe it's the same game. All right.
Yeah. So he got sent off at the end. I think it was.
Right, because of the goal. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a bit dodgy. Yes, the referee blew his whistle. That was more so of a referee's opinion that he thought, you know what, time's up. I don't care if you put this crossing or not. That's not really tactical and, you know, on face errors like we've suffered a lot this season. You talk about, you know, Granada away, the Girona game as well. You had, of course, both Real Madrid games this season. I think we've lost all three Clásicos this season. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them have been, you know, filled with controversy from the Madrid point of view.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk about some of the other instances, but a lot of the other instances in this game about, especially the penalties. Penalties is decisions that, again, you can yell all you want, but those are referee decisions. And to go back to it, if it's not enough to overturn it, then it's not going to be overturned. And it's the initial call by the referee. And you could argue whether the referee is right or not from the beginning, right? That's the thing that we're arguing. That's like the controversy. But the goal line technology, that's the one thing in this game that I find to be inexcusable that doesn't go down to the referee or the VAR. Because to our point, even though we believe, and now today I saw an angle from above that, yeah, very much looks like the ball is over. But if VAR does not have enough discernible evidence to overturn it, it's not getting overturned. So because the initial call by the referee was that it was not a goal, and he did not call initially for the goal, they did not have enough in the moment to overturn it. And I can see that argument, and I agree with that. But I don't want to hear that next year because I just want goal line technology, whether it's right or wrong. So if this isn't a goal and goal line technology can show me that it's not, then it's not. And it's just, it's silly to me that Liga is so far behind in some certain ways. And I feel like covering the Liga now for 15 years, that's the way it feels like at times that I wonder where La Liga, you have this big product. You have arguably the 5 biggest teams in world football, maybe the top 2 teams.
You have to remember as well, we were late on VAR as well. We were the last top 5 side to get VAR. I don't know I think we're getting the semi-automated offside next season, but we still don't have.
Great.
I think that was the first thing I said when I reported when the news came out. I think in November that La Liga were going to approve the semi-automated offside for next season. Yeah. I said that we're going to get semi-automated offside, but we still don't have goal line technology. Like, what's the point?
Well, yeah, this doesn't seem to me, that play did not seem to me like a referee and VAR failing as it did in a Liga failing.
Yeah, I agree. Again, from the 2 angles that I saw that they showed me, I don't know if VAR had more. I said, yeah, okay, you cannot clearly tell that the ball is crossed the line. You can't really get the goal. I understood that. Yeah. But the issue is that when you look at a few other angles that were available, even the Bellingham, when he scored the winning goal, which is on the side where Barcelona had the controversial call, there is a camera that now we've seen come out afterwards.
Yeah.
That can tell if the ball was in or not. So they had an angle available to them.
Yep, from the corner flag.
That's the issue. That's the issue that I have personally, that you did not check all the angles. You just checked the 2 main ones that you had, and you just called and moved on. And to credit Cesar Sotogrado for one thing and one thing only. He said during the audio leak, guys, take your time. This is a huge decision, but wait 5 minutes. It does not matter. We have to get this right. I'll hold my hands up. He did the right thing there. But bloody hell, are you telling me that you didn't have enough angles when I'm seeing, 4 or 5 different angles that came out during the game and almost instantly after the game? That's where I have the issue.
Yep.
It's ridiculous. But it's not only that. You had the Fermin chance. I think the Camavinga on Lamine Yamal should have definitely been a red card, especially because it was outside the box as well. If it was a penalty, I can get away with a yellow. That's fair enough. But again, there was coverage there, but Rudiger and Tchouameni were way behind Lamine Yamal to the point that he was going to be clear on goal as well. So it would have been a clear goal scoring opportunity.
That one's tough too, though, because I guess my question I'm not understanding is that in live time, to me, it looked like with that speed that Tchouameni was going and the way that Camavinga had slowed up Lamine Yamal a little bit before that play, I think the idea was that Tchouameni was going to have the angle with the speed he was going at. So that was a really bang decision by the referee. But my question is, is the rule that they can't, I may be confusing this with basketball as well in the flagrants, but can the referee go back or VAR go back and take the yellow and turn it into a red if they judge then that Tchouameni was...
Yes, they can. The only thing that VAR can't do is give second yellows for red cards. That's the only thing they can do. So if someone...
yellow initially, so they can't give a second yellow.
No, they can't give a second yellow. No. So VAR can overturn a yellow card into a red card. If they deem that, look, he was clearly on goal, that should be red, they can do that. But the referee in the game, let's say Camavinga gets a second yellow in the 7th minute and gets sent off, VAR cannot review. Can't review that.
Yeah, so I think that would be my question too. That the referee made to me, I thought Tchouameni had inside positioning as well on that play. So like if I was a referee in live time and kind of from above seeing the same angle, I would have given a yellow. But yeah, the question would be then why didn't VAR? Because then you you actually freeze it and stop and you go, wait, Tchouameni was it like 3 feet behind him?
Yeah.
3 yards behind him, and same thing with Rudiger. So yeah, that probably should have been overturned into a red card. And that's frustration with that too, because it comes in an instance in the game where now you're talking about a referee not, to your point about the Modric actually deserving a yellow for the Raphinha tackle. That was the only play from the entire game that I was like, that is so egregiously bad. And that's a referee mistake because that referee in that instance says, I don't want to give a yellow. In the same way he wanted to give the Camavinga red because you don't want to turn a game on its head, but a rule is a rule. So if a player makes the tackle in the 2nd minute or they make it in the 50 or the 60th minute or whatever, it's the same call. So consistency is important too. And that, again, has been one of my issues with the referees in the Liga. The referees in the Liga this season, and I see this when I watch Athletic Club against Real Sociedad or Real Betis versus Cadiz, whoever. And you'll see that they don't want these games to boil over. So I don't know if you need to, in the preseason or whatever, find a way to get these players understood, like, hey, we're going to be more harsh on you this season even and overcorrect or something because they don't want things to boil. I feel like the referees are kind of allowing them to play through because and La Liga in the past, though, too, going back to the days of, I know you think of Guardiola and Mourinho as like this wonderful world, but those games were kind of hard to watch. Like those were melees, those were fights. And I think La Liga over the course of all these years has almost overcorrected that and said, hey, we want our product to be as enjoyable as possible because it is a bit slower to watch in the Premier League, just in terms of like the ball movement. So it's a bit slower product. So we want this, we don't want these stoppages. We want these games to work well. And even 2 years ago, that study that came out that said, I think La Liga the ball was only in play for 54 to 90 years ago, right? And so they're trying to correct that by kind of moving it along. But in doing that, you're compromising the final results of these games. And I say this about the Modric, but it works the other way. That I feel like, who was it that got away with one? One of the Barcelona players got away. I think De Jong got away with one a few weeks ago before he got injured, where he kind of pulled somebody down, didn't get the yellow, and the Barcelona players started protesting that he didn't deserve the yellow, but the ref never gave the yellow. And they're already complaining about the yellow that never happened. So it happens both ways. But yeah, the refs just need to be better. I don't know. That's how I sum that up again.
You have any thoughts on the Fermin potential penalty? I thought at the time that
honestly, what I said, and I'll stick by this, having watched it again, I think that Rudiger was in that space. And I think that, how is it? I was upset when I heard people thought that Fermin Lopez had flopped there. I don't think he flopped at all. I think it was a tiny man running into a big man. And again, I played basketball enough that I didn't get that call when I ran into the center, right? The guy that had, because Rudiger's got 60 pounds on him or what, you know what I mean? Whatever was weight. So I think Fermin Lopez, he did push the ball a bit farther beyond. So the argument I think is that Fermin Lopez, maybe that ball is no longer, maybe he can't get to that ball, but unless he goes through Rudiger, and he didn't go through Rudiger because Rudiger's double his weight. So the idea that Fermin Lopez flopped, that's nonsense to me, and that was frustrating to see. But I think it's a no call. To be honest, like that's where I land with that. But then that brings up the question of the Vasquez and Kubarsi stuff.
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah,
right, we'll bring up. So it's just like, again, consistency across the match are questions. And so I'm admitting Fermin Lopez, Rudiger, no penalty. So let's talk about the other one that was a penalty.
For me, I think first of all, Cancelo should have taken out Vasquez before that. Letting him get into the box is ridiculous, and it's crazy to me that everyone after the game, I've not seen one person, former referee, current referee, former player, current player, analyst, pundit. I've not seen one person say that was a penalty by Kubarsi because his foot was already there. Vasquez runs into it, clearly looking for the penalty, and also Vasquez went down very, 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 very lightly as well. Again, like you mentioned. What can VAR do? I think that's more so a Cesar Soto Grando mistake because he gave the penalty. And again, VAR said, look, it's not really clear and obvious to overturn it.
You can't overturn it. Yeah.
So as soon as it was given, you knew that the VAR wasn't going to overturn it. But again, just another terrible, terrible decision where Barcelona have had this so many times this season. Remember, this season, I think we've only gotten 3 penalties in La Liga. I remember last season, we only got 2. We never, ever, ever get these calls in the box. Look at the Raphinha one against Rayo Vallecano, Lamine Yamal at the beginning of the season. I forget which team it was against. It was a team in a yellow kit or something. I forget that one where he got just completely shoved in the box.
The first Villarreal match?
Could be. I think it was very early on in the season, like September, October time. It's just all these things. And yet again, this light one just gets thrown apart. And again, this is why I'm I talked about after PSG game thinking like, look, I know for a fact we're going to lose this Classico. Now you're thinking, okay, you had a goal line that probably should have been a goal. You have the potential red card coming back, a penalty that should have been given. If you go into halftime leading, game is changing. Again, I think if we went to halftime leading against PSG, I think we could have survived. Same thing in this game. And yet again, it's just not only is the momentum going against us, but also the luck as well.
That's exactly what I said. That it's I'm seeing people scream about controversy and they're handing the league to Real Madrid. And I don't think any of that is true. But I do think that in this match, anything that could have gone wrong for Barca did go wrong. Every 50-50, how are they going to decide, didn't go Barcelona's way. And that's why this game, more than maybe any other that I mean, 7 years. I mean, it's that long where it wasn't just one decision. There was just so many decisions in this match. I've said, if Barcelona get half of those decisions, they win the game. But they got
literally
none of them. And so by getting none of those calls that are all 50-50, and again, like isolated incidents, if you split 2 of those and say Barcelona get 1 and don't get the other, I go, I get it. Because even, again, the Kubarsi thing, like I thought it was a weak penalty. To your point, I think Vasquez created the contact with his right leg, which is not where his weight was, which, again, in VAR, they're not going to overturn that. But I think that the referee has to get that right from the jump. I mean, his weight was on his left foot. He had pushed the ball too far forward and was only going to reach it by, again, taking his left leg then and putting his weight forward that way. So he trailed the right leg, which he should have just brought in front of him to go for the ball. And I think he probably gets by Kubarsi if he just moves his right foot in the path he was already on instead of dragging it behind him, which is what they do. That's professionalism. That's what happens. But I think there's an argument for that not to be a penalty either. I think it is. I get why it was called a penalty, but I think it's a weak penalty, which
I do think, to be fair, I think VAR would have gave it if Cesar Soto Grando didn't give it. I just think it was just that kind of day, just because everything was going against us that day, not more so because of the actual penalty itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying by the rule of the law. I don't feel like that was a penalty because I've seen, what was it? Dembele had one last year where
I'll bring it up in the chat as well. Saka had the same thing against Bayern Munich against Neuer in the final second in the first leg of the Emirates. Same thing as well. Yep. It's just you get used to it at this point. They scream Negrera from the rooftop, but the reality is on their side. But just to end off on the Classico,
I kind of want to turn it on its head real quick for a second because of the Cancelo conversation here. That I want to make sure, because you and I have been complaining now, and we're going to go on my podcast in a minute and complain there too. So we are complaining about all the controversy and all that stuff. But I want just to be very clear that does not. I'm not using that as an excuse. Like, it's not a shield for Real Madrid winning this game. Because Barcelona, on the second and third goal, they lost that game. Like, they gave away those goals, and Cancelo particularly was really, really poor. So I just want to make very clear that those are not excuses, but those are factors as to why Barcelona didn't win this game. But Barcelona did play poor enough in that last 15 minutes or 20 minutes to lose the game, unfortunately. And
again, since Fermin scored that goal, we just dropped the level.
And Lucas Vazquez doesn't beat you. Lucas Vazquez should not beat you. And the fact that Lucas Vazquez did beat Barcelona, that's a frustrating thing. Twice, right? And that is a frustrating thing. That's what shouldn't have happened. So I want to make sure that we're not making excuse. Barcelona lost the match. And I know there's not a lot of Madridistas who are this far into our chats and this far into our
God.
But the point is that, yes, I'm not making an excuse, but I am saying that there was a number of decisions that, to our point, that we agree on that did not go Barcelona's way. And that's unfortunate because that was the game. That was the game before Barcelona lost the game.
I think the positive for me to take out of this is that I came into this game thinking we're going to get, just going to lose this game. We're not going to compete whatsoever. The fact we did compete, made an interesting game, and lost because of these, few decisions that didn't go our way. I think I can live with that. And I just want to end off on the Classico discussion on Cancelo. Of course, now he's had a dreadful week. Barcelona had a dreadful week. I think Cancelo's equally having a very, very poor week. Just want to get your thoughts quickly on Cancelo, on his future as well. What are your thoughts? Would you keep him? Does it depend on the kind of operation? Would you keep him no matter what? Would you be open to letting him leave? A lot of people have been asking about it in the chat, so just want to get your thoughts on it. I'll give you my thoughts as well afterwards.
Well, I think this week opens it up, honestly. I actually think that this week they have to reconsider everything because you, at the end of the day, say, Guardiola didn't want him, Bayern Munich didn't want him, teams don't necessarily want him, and Barcelona have needed him, but it does show you the frustration of depth, that you have a right back, who's probably a right winger, if we're being honest, playing as a left back and having to need to be the left back. So I'm not making an excuse for him either, but he is defending on his wrong foot for so much of it. And Hector Fort was so good at left back, and we've seen guys again.
Who's also on his wrong foot as well. He's also a right back
as well. Right. I think there's some naivete and youth in that Hector Fort has been better on the left side than the right side. I want to remind people that his highest ceiling is as a right back, which is his natural position. But the point is, he's also a better natural defender. He's more of a right center back than he is a right back in the way that, when you have fullbacks, they're either, are they closer to center back or are they closer to winger? And Ford is closer to a center back while Cancelo is closer to a winger. But yeah, it brings up the question that if it's the right price, you bring him back, but you cannot fully rely on him in the way that they have. Like Marcos Alonso has now in the second half of the season been a zero because he was hurt, and his level also has not been high enough.
Oh my God. And his game against Perkins, man.
Yeah. And Hector Fort is 17. So I think going into next season with the fullback situation is really interesting because Balde, while he didn't have the best season, he's a better defensive left back than Cancelo. So to the point about PSG, the sub that I would have loved to make is taking out Cancelo for Balde. That is actually the sub that I would have loved to make because that defensively fortifies you a little bit to survive that and give you a similar speed threat with Balde. Even again, his finishing final product isn't as obviously as good as Cancelo's. Cancelo's just so much better on the ball, but Balde at least can be an outlet to take some pressure off when you're down 10 men and has that speed, but defensively it just leagues better than Cancelo, even at this point with their 8-year difference or whatever the age difference is. So I was on the camp that Joao Felix, the price is not going to be right. I can't imagine, even if he accepts these low wages that he reportedly has, even getting that loan does not make sense to me because you're going to either have to say, all right, a loan to buy and guaranteed installments or whatever. He does not give enough to you in his moments of magic that you have to find that elsewhere, whether it's from the academy or wherever. You have to find something else and strike gold. But Cancelo, top level fullbacks are so hard to find.
Exactly.
Top level fullbacks who are that talented on the ball are so hard to find. And it's so hard for me to argue that he feels like 80-20, right? 80% of the time, I'm like, yep, totally get it. The other 20 defensively are so bad, or he leaves space open that you go, can Barcelona really trust him in big moments? Probably not. But I don't know. I went from like 75-25, keep him, to legitimately 55-60-40, still keep him. But it changes. The calculation changes now.
I think
loan.
Exactly. I think what's happened is that it's not a definitive keep now from Barcelona. It's keep under some decent conditions, which I agree with. I personally, like you mentioned, I keep Cancelo mainly because the fullback market is so difficult. We're gonna have some good coverage next season. Again, we've relied a lot on Cancelo this season. He's been our only natural fullback that's been consistent this season. I still personally think overall this season he's been Barcelona's second best player based on form and game, and I think he just had an absolutely terrible week. And people have said, like, yes, defensively at the highest level, he's a bit vulnerable. Next season, you're going to have, of course, Julian Araujo coming back.
I'm not sure if they're going to sell him or not with Hector Fort because
I think we're gonna keep. I think we're gonna keep Julian Araujo. And it's gonna be about Alex Valle, whether or not he gets sold or not.
Right.
And that's what Barcelona are gonna look at because
too. Yeah,
at
because
left back there's Sergi Cardona of Las Palmas, who's gonna be available on a free transfer. Which again, free transfers Barcelona absolutely love. He's done all right this season for Las Palmas, a good option. And then of course you have Cancelo, who can kind of do both roles. You have Roberto as a very very last resort. I think Roberto has done very well in the midfield this season, but at right back he's just beyond dreadful. Even the last 10 minutes against Cadiz when he was playing there, he was on ice, on thin ice. But for me personally, I think what the rumor is right now that the club want to get him on loan with a mandatory buy option next summer, 2025, for around 20 million euros. That formula, I personally would do it. I think it is worth it.
It depends. I would also argue it depends on the contract that he eventually gets. Because if you sign him for 4 years next season, that is a calamity. If it's
definitely not. It would be like a two-year deal, maybe 2+1, maybe at the absolute most. Yeah.
I also think the fullbacks are almost impossible to talk about because of the domino effect. Like, of the insiders I've spoken to, they always say, I'm not sure, but Araujo is the name. That is the smoke where there's fire rumor about Barcelona needing a big sale to get them out of trouble. And if Araujo's gone, that likely means that Koundé is a center back, right? Because on paper, if you were able to keep Araujo and you keep Koundé as the starting right back, having the assortment of riches of Hector Fort to be able to play on either side, bring back Julian Araujo to be your backup. Because at Las Palmas, of what I've seen from him, he was a good enough starter for 45% of the season, and I was really impressed with him. This second half of the season has not been good. He's not been fully fit either, but it's not been good enough to be the starter. Like, for anyone who thinks that he's just going to walk in and be the starter, it's not going to happen. He's a backup.
It's been like a trial run for him. I think he's done enough to show that, yes, he has the ability to kind of provide some coverage and competition for Cancelo. I think the main plan for Barcelona would be to have Koundé, Cancelo, Araujo, and Balde as kind of your natural right backs. You have Hector Fort, who's going to be playing with Barcelona Athletic next season. He won't get promoted to the first team like Lamine Yamal and Paco Barca. He'll be kind of bouncing it in between. Yeah. With Alex Valle, you probably maybe cash out on him or loan him out again. Maybe pass up on Sergi Cardona as well. But you just have to have your options there. And on your Araujo statement, the issue is that Barcelona, in my opinion, from what I've seen and what insiders have told me as well, we don't need a big sale. Again, what the club of this kind of segue us into the Xavi talk as well.
Yeah.
What the club have been portraying so much since Xavi announced his resignation is that what our plan is this summer is to keep what we have, add a few pieces, add maybe 1 or 2 pieces, which I think is the correct formula as well. Keep what you have, build on it, because you just chop and change every single summer, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. Same with including the manager as well. So they want to keep what they currently have, add 1 or 2 pieces on top of that. The sale of Araujo, Frankie de Jong, Raphinha right now does not help Barcelona whatsoever. We are still in the 1-3 rule. If we sell Araujo for 100 million, we can only spend a certain amount, 30 million, on the transfer market. It's all about returning to the 1-1 rule. And there's multiple ways for Barcelona to return to the 1-1 rule. In order to do so, we have to generate 100 million euros. So you can sign a new kit sponsor deal with either Nike or Puma, get the 100 million bonus. You're sorted. Get the money that Liberal Football Finance owes you for 50% of Barca's vision, or sell that somewhere else. You get that. You're sorted as well. There's so many different avenues for Barcelona to return to normality and return to the plan that they have set out in place. All this talk, in my opinion, of, Barcelona can't do anything this summer, it's impossible, we're going to have to sell players and not sign anyone, I think is a load of crap and a load of noise. And one of the main reasons why Xavi resigned at Barcelona, because the media just like to turn things on its head, make things controversial, to just get click and engagement, and they don't look at the reality. That's how I see it personally.
I think Barcelona it's hard to tell because we feel like from day to day and week to week, we're following the news. We're trying to figure out where the numbers are going here, where the numbers are going there. And it's always the truth is always that the financial situation of Barcelona is somewhere in the middle. That's always been the case. That is it as bad as it looks on the outside? No, but is it as good as hope might say? No, right? Like even losing their financial officer a few weeks ago, like all that different changes behind the scenes does affect how this is all going to move forward. And we don't even know. Like again, the Libero thing was supposed to be done and dusted, and then that money doesn't arrive. And now that's more controversy and issues. And even the Nike situation that looks like it's just not going to have to be, it's going to be relitigated next season. But why was that? I always think of Laporta every day, or whoever it is, like the board members every day. And I think about my own day and I go, okay, well, I know they have longer meals in restaurants than I do. I'm seeing Laporta film his video now. I saw him at the game yesterday, right? And I'm like thinking, where is he at this moment? Where is he at this moment? And then I watch the news come out and I'm like, when did that happen? When did those conversations take place? When did those negotiations take place? If I'm seeing from day to day that this player is that, or this person is doing this and that. So I think in terms of what's going to happen with the club and getting to the 1-to-1, to your point, I think it's all possible, even without the big sale. It's tough because it has to do with revenue. And I think the big idea about the stadium, I think for me, what I'm expecting, this is my heart, not my mind, because my mind and the research I do is different. But my heart says this season and this summer, rather, a big sale isn't necessary, just like the last few seasons. But you're going to have to hear about registering. That's going to be a major issue again.
I was just about to mention that. I think Barcelona's issue is not signing players; it's registration.
It's registering, right? So that'll be a big issue because you're also not going to sign a huge player like Bernardo Silva and not be able to register. Like that's not going to happen, right? And so Barcelona somehow find a way to get it done. But at the moment, all we know, the fact of the matter is, at the moment, Vitor Roque cannot even be registered upcoming. But you also know that Marcos Alonso is likely going to be gone.
Same with Inigo Martinez. He has a contract. He's only been registered for one season as well, but he's probably going to be looking at the exit door this summer.
Exactly. So you're going to lose players. So likely, like, Vitor Roque will be registered, but you're not going to be able to bring in quote unquote big players, even if you have some revenue to do so, because Barcelona will have on paper, to your point, if money does come in, and those are big ifs, but when the money that is expected comes in, they should be able to get back to 1-to-1. And revenue is not an issue at Barcelona. It's the financial fair play and registering that is always the issue, not
complying with the rules of the league.
Exactly. And that is the thing that I feel like you can put it on my gravestone at this point. The number of times I've screen it to the heavens, because every time I do something with non-Barcelona fans are like, Barcelona's broke. I'm like, they're not broke. They're actually.
I think I deserve a financial degree at this point, honestly, for this coverage I've done for like the past 3 or 4 years.
I have an economics degree, and I talk to lawyers in Spain. Like, how did I get myself into this? But yeah, the big thing is like the stadium. If Barcelona can get back in the stadium in November or December, results on the field will matter. But the revenue that's going to come in from that, and you've been to Barcelona, I've been to Barcelona. I count the days to the next time I get to go back to that city. We know that tourism is not going anywhere in the city of Barcelona.
I was going to go back in November, but no, I'm not going back anymore now.
Well, until like climate change really, I'm saying like in general, like you have neutrals going to the stadium as well, like people just visiting the city. Like until climate change really takes care of the Mediterranean, like it's a beautiful place to be. People will fill that stadium. The season ticket holders obviously didn't sell their tickets. They just don't go up to Montjuic, especially the older people. So the stadium will be back. The museum will be prospering, and the revenue of Barcelona is not the issue, but it's basically another year of swallowing a pill that you don't want to swallow. And you do hope, and this is a question that I have for you kind of in the macro, that we're saying about this season being over. But even if this season is over, do you think that next season can be progress based on what's built? And in total for this season, Barcelona, if they finish second in the Liga, they made the quarterfinals of the Champions League. This was kind of the expectations that we had at the start of the season. But you hope that they'd won the Spanish Super Cup or the Copa del Rey, so it wasn't a trophyless season. But it's a trophyless season where you finish as in second in the Liga and in the quarterfinals of the Champions League is about, with this kind of squad, with all the financial issues and all that, is where you would have expected them to be. And that's like the weird, we're disappointed, yet where you thought we would be.
Just to add to that, I think Champions League wise, we reached our goal. I have no problem with that. It's just the manner of how we lost it.
How?
Exactly. And of course, the route. I remember doing the live. I did a live stream of watching the draw, and I was ecstatic. Not only because I didn't think that Barcelona were going to win the Champions League. Of course not. I just thought the route is possible and viable. If we beat PSG, we have Dortmund now, then we're in a final. That's why I was excited. And we talk about the league as well. I think personally, Barcelona have thrown it away more so than Real Madrid. I think, both teams fully fit, one-off game, best of 5. I think, if you want to talk about NBA, best of 7, I think Barcelona win it in 5 or 6 at the absolute most. I think,
to their credit, though, Real Madrid only lost once. They lost once to Atletico Madrid, and it doesn't matter how they won it, but over the course of the season, they found ways to win game in and game out. They had, just like last season, it almost mirrors it. Bellingham just went on a heater the way Lewandowski did last season, and Lunin was
beginning of the season as well.
Right, that's what I mean. Beginning of the season, right? And then they completely stopped scoring goals, but it was enough. And enough distance had been created where your rival, the second place team, did enough to take the title away from themselves and take them out of the title picture. So it really does feel like Real Madrid basically returned the favor of what last year's title was for Barcelona.
But yeah, just to add, I think so. It's because we went trophyless and the way we've kind of thrown away the league and the Champions League. That's why it's overall a failure. I would say, to be honest, the season has been a failure apart from the Champions League, where again the main goal was to reach quarterfinal for the revenue for the budget, and we did that, which is just good. But just so many things that just didn't go our way. But finally, just to end off the stream here, I think we had to talk about the future of Xavi, which all of a sudden now is taking a big remontada. Of course, we talked about it in your episode a few weeks ago, but for some people who haven't seen that, I want to get your thoughts on the position of Xavi. Do you want him to stay? Would you rather get a Hansi Flick or a Tuchel, Rafa Marquez, or rather just give Xavi one more season and maybe go for Klopp in 2025, or maybe Xavi does very well this season, next season, and then we just keep it for the foreseeable future? Of course, the rumors at the moment is that there's going to be a big meeting on Wednesday, and probably that will be when the decision is made. And Xavi is a bit more open now to staying, but only open if he is back in the summer. Keep in mind, I just want to defend Xavi very, very quickly before I get your thoughts. Last summer was a disaster. Keep in mind, he got his 7th-choice pivot option. He got the 2 Joaos on literally the final hour of deadline day. Gundogan transfer was brilliant. Of course, Indigo was done way back in February, and then Victor Roque did not come in January. So the whole entire window in terms of personnel who we got were okay, but just dispersed, no preparation, and that was the main issue. I think Xavi wants a bit more structure for this upcoming summer transfer window. Of course, targets as well. But what are your thoughts on the situation of Xavi, and would you keep him or not?
To be honest, I'm confused. I'm confused I'll get out, because I've been now for weeks screaming from the heavens to, again, everybody who'll listen, that if Xavi's leaving, and this is true, if you've read Graham Hunter's book about the making of the best team in the world, Barcelona, or you've read Fear and Loathing in the Liga with Sid Lowe, or Jimmy Burns' book, like anything related to Barcelona, and anybody who's really in it, right, and writes these full books about Barcelona can explain to you and tell you that the Interno is exhausting. It is an exhausting, I wouldn't say toxic, but there is an intensity to being the Barcelona manager, especially if you speak Catalan, especially if you're, have your relationships with local journalists or media members or whatever it is there, and board members. Like, if you are in it and you're, as in Guardiola or Luis Enrique, or of course Xavi, and then even like Tito Villanova had said it in his one season as well. Like, he was dealing with everything he was dealing with, but even that season, like the weight of taking over for Guardiola and the weight of the Entorno, it weighs on these guys. So my confusion is that Xavi's main reason to me was that, hey, results didn't go our way. And not to say that this team needs a new voice, but I want to send this club in another direction. Maybe I'm not the guy right now at the moment, and I can't deal with the weight and intensity of the Entorno until maybe later in the future, right? And so that's why I'm stepping aside. And he makes that decision at that point in the season when he feels like it's the heaviest and weighing on him. So how could you lose the 2 biggest matches, arguably the last 2 years, against PSG and against Real Madrid, and then you wind up thinking about continuity? My confusion is I don't know what the incentives are. Like, there's no way that things have changed. Like, he does have the full support of the
board were never considering sacking him as well. There's never been a point where they're like, oh, they're really thinking about it or anything like that.
No, the board has never turned on him. The fans have never turned on him either. The way that another club legend
locally, no.
Well, the ones that people listen to, like even some of those that the club listens to, turned on Koeman. Like, Koeman didn't have everybody.
I turned on Koeman.
Well, but nobody listened to us. But I'm saying, but I'm saying, getting to the finish line, they didn't turn on Koeman, but Xavi still had the backing of, we'll say,
But with Koeman, everyone knew that Laporta wanted to sack in the summer. He just had no viable replacement to come in. Right. He was set up for failure, Koeman.
He was still a club legend that is usually protected. And so Xavi is overtly being protected by the board. Right? So he has the support to continue on. I'm just confused. I don't know what has changed.
You're telling me, I remember if you remember on your show a few weeks ago, I said that we could win the Classico final, Champions League 10-0. I still don't think Xavi will stay. And now all of a sudden there's all this optimism, which I'm very, very surprised about. Yes, I'm ecstatic because I want Xavi to stay. I think not only is he the right man going forward, but the replacements on the market are just catastrophically poor. I was told last week by a good source that Rafa Marquez is basically already in the door, especially with Xavi leaving now. Again, I said this in my previous video, my exclusive, that the only way Rafa Marquez doesn't become the manager is if Xavi stays. So the fact that now Xavi all of a sudden has changed his mind, despite not only did we lost both to PSG, and if we won, maybe like, okay, yeah, they're a bit of on a hive, they're hyped, it's cool, whatever. But we got thrashed in both games as well, and all of a sudden there's a bit of optimism. I think it's because Xavi, he just wants to be back this summer. Of course, it's been names floating around, stuff like that. But the main thing is that he wants the players that he asked for. Of course, the summer 2022 when the economic levers were activated, all the players that we signed, he asked for. I think apart maybe from Lewandowski, I think he just asked for a striker, and the club went out and got someone to advertise, help us with marketing, stuff like that. Lewandowski is still the top shirt kid seller at Barcelona. Last summer, he didn't ask for any of those players apart from Cancelo. He didn't want Joao Felix, didn't want Romeu. He asked for Gundogan and Indigo when they were free transfers, of course. And I think Victor Roque was kind of a general agreement of a nice young striker making up the ranks. I think that's where Xavi really, falls through. Even when Xavi first resigned, a lot of the reports that were coming out at the time that Xavi doesn't feel bad. He didn't get the players that he wanted. The players that did come in all came in, literally 2 hours before the deadline closed. They were already, 3 games into a La Liga season, and preseason already well and truly finished. So if he now
and even his relationship with Deco has been called in question quite a few times.
I never believed any of that.
Okay.
That's all talk. That's all talk. But now you're coming up to this summer, Xavi thinking, okay, it's way easier for me to stay. Of course, the replacement out there there's next to nothing. I will stay if you back me this summer. Now, I think the club can back him. Again, registration is the issue, not buying or bringing in players per se. But now what did the board do? I think that's where the big question is. Can they really convince Xavi? What are your thoughts now? Do you think Xavi will end up staying? And there's been a kind of a bit of a momentum shift in regards to his decision or not?
Well, and not to be boring, but you and I are very much aligned on the same page about the Rafa Marquez point, that I do question whether or not Rafa Marquez is a better choice than Xavi. And the club is in a position financially, even with the manager, because again, when you have to pay, that's the other thing.
Appointing Rafa Marquez from the club's perspective makes perfect sense. That's why I don't really hit the club for choosing that. But as a fan, I'm thinking we're taking 2 steps backwards. If Xavi was to leave, like I said on your show, we need someone with experience. I'd rather have Hansi Flick than Rafa Marquez. I'm being completely honest. And I think Thomas Tuchel knocks out Real Madrid, wins the Champions League. There's a bit of a Mourinho 2010 2.0 kind of thing. I'd rather have Thomas Tuchel than Rafa Marquez, because
you losing on that one. I'm not sure about that.
We just need someone with experience, someone who's been there, done it, that can elevate the squad, not someone who can come in and keep it kind of the same pace. But from the club's point of view, you bet someone in-house can speak the language, knows the club, has a contract. All the other ones, there's no total consensus. None of them really, they're all going to be massive risks, whether you bring in Hansi Flick, Thomas Tuchel, that might even get sacked come November, December. Then Rafa Marquez just comes in as an interim anyways. So I understand the club's perspective.
Then you have to pay the contract of the guy that
exactly. So I understand fully why Laporta said, look, if Xavi doesn't say I'm going to give it to Rafa Marquez, it makes sense from their point of view. I understand it, but as a fan, it just gives me no confidence.
Keeping Xavi's continuity is also the cheapest thing they can do as well. So I mean, that's a huge part of this piece as well. So it's like, again, Barcelona's not broke, but for this coming season, they're going to try to spend as minimal money as possible. That's why I do have some transfer stuff. Unfortunately, as a content creator yourself, you know that with everybody kind of leaving and the exodus of the frustration of a season, that you and I are going to have to pivot to transfer talk immediately, which is impossible to do because Barcelona probably, again, I'm going to start yelling Sergi Cardona and telling people, hey, you should get excited about Sergi Cardona because he's the only one that with any faith I can say Barcelona will be definitely having conversations with and talking to him about continuity to be brought in. So I think as we kind of pivot to transfer talk and all that stuff, having Xavi as a piece of continuity for next season could do a lot worse if the financial situation is not improved. And then it's going to be difficult to say because I don't know. It's kind of weird though. And this is the final thought I want to get from you is, as we wrap it up, but like if 2025 is a season that Barcelona know they're going to want to spend, would you rather try, and Klopp is the weird kind of aberration in the distance, right? Because if you could get some kind of verbal agreement that he'll come in 2025 with the stadium opening back up, or 2025, 2016, you know what I mean? So with the stadium set to open up midway through that season, hopefully with construction, whatever, but and then potentially having more to spend in FFP and getting, we'll say one or two, like one big marquee name and then be able to fill in the squad a little bit better. Would you rather that manager potentially, let's say it is Flick and Flick does well this season, so you want to keep him on? Would you rather have some guy come in now and give them, a full season to run up for next season? Or do you think it's Barcelona though? If you fail, you fail and you're out. So I'm kind of answering my own question that I feel like they should just kind of kick the can down the road for one more season because they know financially until that stadium opens back up, it's not going to be perfect. So you kick that can down the road one more time, and Xavi's given so much to the club and, people have on him. So you kind of take advantage of his commitment.
Not even that, like, I would just jump in really quick. Just give me a yes or no here. Do you think Xavi has done enough to be sacked? I think Xavi's only big mistake this season was the 4-1 against Madrid in the Super Cup. I think him personally, he was the one who cost us that game. Other than that, in terms of lineup selection, tactical approaches, I really don't think Xavi made any big mistakes in this whole entire season. I think it mostly came down to the players. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, like I don't throw out the tie against Napoli. Barcelona won that tie, and the players, and I think about the players who brought in, like the Lamine Yamal Kubarsi factor, that didn't have to work out that way. Like Lamine Yamal and Kubarsi did not have to be, as a 16 and 17-year-old kid, I don't know how many managers they succeed. I mean, I think they're both can't miss prospects, right? I mean, you and I could be on the touchline and they would like do well. But I do think there is something to be said about how he has managed to have a locker room that has no like late 20s continuity. Like he either got some old geezers or he's got some babies, right? Kids in diapers. And those are basically his squad with also the walking injured of Gavi and Pedri and De Jong, and they lost Koundé for a part in the first half of the season. It took him a while to come back. Araujo took a while to come back. Christensen had his moment. So without that, real continuity and fully being healthy, I think Xavi has managed it rather well. But it's this odd thing where if you can find someone, to your point, with more experience who can navigate games a bit better, then and actually also have discipline on the sideline a bit better.
But I'd still rather keep Xavi, even if I had the choice of Jurgen Klopp tomorrow or Xavi tomorrow. I personally would still rather pick Xavi. The only reason why we're looking for a manager is because Xavi himself decided to walk. I just do want to add this before we end off the stream, something I think will have a huge factor in the next year in terms of decision making, and that is the elections that are going to be taking place next year in 2025. So Laporta is going to have to make some magic. If he has Xavi as his manager and he has Bernardo Silva and Dani Olmo in the midfield, might do him well in the election. I think, again, he will probably win the elections, and should. I think any other president, we would probably be bankrupt and may not even exist at this point. He's done an absolutely exceptional job in, reviving the club, making us somewhat compete. But these decisions now coming off, 1 year into, presidential debates and stuff like that, that's going to be the key moment for him. I think his game plan would be keep Xavi for a year. He does well next season. Cool. If not, his contract expires, he can move on. We can bring in, Jurgen Klopp. I think, to be honest, Jurgen Klopp, he's done this twice now where he says he's going to go on a year sabbatical, then he comes into a job in November. But with now Nagelsmann tied down with Germany, I think that keeps his position a bit open as well. So I think Laporta's contingency plan would be to keep Xavi for 1 season, back him in the summer. He does well during next season. Cool. Renew his contract. Happy days. Everyone's good. You have, Xavi, who's one of the faces of the club, to manage the club going forward. If he doesn't do well, he decides to leave. He's done, I think, his due diligence, Xavi, to stay for 1 more season with especially no managerial experience being available. And then, of course, you can go for someone better in 2025. Then 2025, when he brings in Klopp and he signs Holland and all this stuff, it'll do him well to win the presidential election, if he, of course, decides to start again, which I think he probably will. But I
wouldn't bring it home. But that's I just want to give people a little taste of next time I'm on your stream or one of the summer shows that we do together. So we can have that conversation another day. But
yeah. All right. So I guess we'll end it here. Talked about a lot in this hour. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below, subscribe as well if you haven't already, and check out, of course, the Barcelona podcast. Link is down below. The link they have all over on Spotify as well. Podcasts, you can't get much better than them. And even Mexico own podcast, shout out to them. They do a very, very good job as well. But yeah, thanks to you, Dan, for joining, and we'll catch you guys next time on the channel. Again, it's going to be a very, very intense next month. Again, Barcelona have to do a lot of things before the actual window opens. The future of the Joao's manager position as well. So a lot of things are going to be happening. So stay tuned. Much more streams hopefully to come in the future, and get those viewerships ready, because there's going to be a lot to cover in these next month. So we'll see you guys next time. Take care. And as always, Visca Barca and Visca Catalunya.